The world's attention is focused on the battlefields in Ukraine, but a silent geostrategic earthquake is redrawing the map of Eastern Europe in a country almost invisible on maps, Moldova. For 3 decades, Vladimir Putin believed he was holding this nation hostage through a weapon of blackmail frozen in time, Transnistria. This enclave, a dangerous remnant of the Cold War, functioned as a dagger pointed at the heart of Chisinau, the Moldovan capital. Putin was so sure of his eternal victory that he never anticipated that the barrel of this gun might one day be turned against him. Today, the Russian army in the region is no longer an elite force, but a group of soldiers trapped in the very trap they have set. Without a single shot being fired, the wind has changed, and Moldova is breaking its chains one by one. The first major step in this collapse was Moldova's historic decision to withdraw from the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. On paper, the CIS was a platform for cooperation. In reality, it was a handcuff used by Moscow to keep its former subjects in line. For 35 years, Moldova lived in this invisible prison, signing hundreds of agreements that served only Russian interests. Recently, the Moldovan parliament tore up these documents. The justification was unquestionable. Russia itself violated all the principles of the community by invading Ukraine and illegally occupying Moldovan territory. By leaving the CIS, Chisinau paralyzed Moscow's pressure mechanisms overnight. More than that, it invalidated the legal basis that Russia used to justify the presence of its troops in Transnistria. Without these agreements, the Russian army has officially become an occupying force without any international legitimacy. Putin's real nightmare is in the village of Kobazna, home to the largest and most dangerous ammunition depot in Eastern Europe. With tens of thousands of tons of Soviet explosives, the site is a ticking time bomb. For years, Putin has used this arsenal and the 1,500 Russian soldiers who guard it like a noose around Moldova's neck. But the joint strategy between Moldova and Ukraine changed the game. Today, these soldiers are in absolute isolation. They cannot receive supplies, new equipment, or rotate their troops. Their weapons are worn out, their tanks are rusting, and their communication systems belong to the last century. The once glorious peacekeeping force has turned into a scrapyard surrounded by nations that no longer accept intimidation. Russian logistics, already overwhelmed by the war in Ukraine, simply have no way to reach this enclave. For decades, Gazprom was the switch that turned the Moldovan economy on and off. Putin used gas as a leash. It was enough for Moldova to look to the West for prices to rise or supplies to be cut off due to technical problems. This cycle of humiliation was what kept the country in poverty. Putin's miscalculation was to attempt the final coup last winter. By trying to suffocate the country, he forced Moldova to do the impossible: diversify. With the support of the European Union and the physical connection with Romania, Moldova spent its first winter without consuming Russian gas. The backbone of the Kremlin's influence has been broken. Without the energy monopoly, pro-Russian politicians lost their main tool of fear, and Moldova was definitively integrated into the European energy grid. If the isolation of troops in Transnistria was already a serious logistical problem, the scenario that really keeps Vladimir Putin up at night is the real possibility of Moldova joining Romania. This movement is not just a romantic desire based on deep historical roots and the common language. It is the geopolitical maneuver that, if carried out, would alter the security map of Eastern Europe irreversibly and instantaneously. Currently, more than 1 million Moldovans already have Romanian passports, and popular support for this historic union is at record levels. For Moscow, this integration would be the ultimate failure, proof that a former Soviet republic can be absorbed into a NATO country democratically, peacefully, and voluntarily. If the borders between the two states are removed, Moldovan territory would become, in the same second, under Article 5 of the Transatlantic Alliance. This means that any Russian aggression in Transnistria would no longer be against a small, isolated country, but against the largest and most powerful military alliance on the planet. In practice, the nuclear and technological umbrella of the West would advance hundreds of kilometers towards the east, reaching the banks of the Dniester River. Instead of facing only the modest Moldovan National Guard, the Kremlin would have to deal with a combined force of 100,000 active soldiers, trained and equipped to NATO's rigorous standards. The sky would be patrolled by state-of-the-art fighter jets and constant surveillance drones. On this new chessboard, the Russian base in Transnistria would go from being a strategic position of intimidation to a catastrophic logistical error. An island of demoralized and obsolete troops surrounded by a modern war machine with no hope of rescue or escape route. Unification would not only be a union of peoples, but a definitive checkmate on Putin's ability to project power in this part of the continent. Moldova's quiet victory is fueling a seismic transformation in other nations that once lived under the Kremlin's boot. The most dramatic and unexpected example of this shockwave is in Armenia, a mountainous nation in the Caucasus that, for decades, was considered Moscow's most loyal and dependent ally in the region. Armenia's recent history resembles a mirror of the Moldovan past. They have entrusted their security, their borders, and their economy to Russian promises that, in the moment of greatest need, have turned out to be empty. During the crisis in the Gorno-Karabakh, Armenia learned the bitter way that Putin's protection was a strategic illusion. Seeing Russia fold its arms while its territory was lashed, the Yerevan government had its moment of clarity. Inspired by Chisinau's audacity to break away from the CIS and seek the West without fear, the Armenians decided it was time to break their own chains. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has taken the radical step of freezing the country's participation in the Russian-led security alliance, signaling a geopolitical divorce that seemed impossible 5 years ago. The impact of this for Putin is catastrophic. As Russian border guards shamefully withdraw from posts they have held for decades in Armenia, the myth of Russian invincibility melts away globally. What Moldova has proved, and Armenia is now replacing, is that the Russian doctrine of controlling one's immediate surroundings through fear only works as long as fear is accepted. When a small nation demonstrates that it is possible to survive and prosper by cutting ties with Moscow, it instills a contagious courage in all its neighbors. The Russian world is shrinking, and the Caucasus is moving from being Putin's strategic backyard to becoming a new front of freedom, following in the courageous footsteps left by Moldova. Unable to act militarily, the Kremlin resorts to desperate hybrid warfare tactics. Attempts at internal destabilization, manipulation via telegram, and cyber attacks have become the new normal. However, Putin underestimated the generational change in Moldova. Moldovan youth today is dynamic, speaks Western languages, and prefers the European digital market to Soviet nostalgia. This new generation has already crossed the psychological threshold of fear. They saw the destruction in Ukraine and understood that the world model offered by Putin only brings isolation. The resilience of the Moldovan people has turned Russian sabotage attempts into catalysts that further accelerate integration with the West. What we see today is the birth of a new regional order. Moldova, which was once just a pawn on Putin's chessboard, has become the architect of its own destiny. Checkmate has been given. The Russian army in Transnistria is now an island of rust in a sea of Western influence. Putin underestimated a people's will to be free. and the ability of democracies to unite in times of crisis. The cry for freedom rising from the banks of the Dniester is breaking through the thick walls of the Kremlin. Moldova is not only surviving, it is overcoming reason against brute force. The map of Eastern Europe is being redrawn with courage and determination, leaving behind the ghost of an empire that tried to stop time and failed miserably.